Tonight, 72 hours of Donald Trump. And trust me, this isn't about politics tonight. It's about normalcy or anything that could possibly resemble it. Then Amazon opening new headquarters in 2 spots in our viewing area, Long Island City and Northern Virginia. That means tens of thousands of jobs and billions in spending. We have got the very latest. Also, some big losses for Republicans on election night, even in some deep red states. Question is, will Republicans be more emboldened in the future to take on the president? Evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us on what's always a busy Tuesday. I'm out for one day, Veterans Day, and look what I missed. So much of it was, frankly, an assault, and I don't think this is partisan when I say this, on norms and even decency. Let's just begin with Veterans Day itself. President Trump, he stayed home yesterday instead of remembering our vets at Arlington, which is traditional for past presidents, Republicans and Democrats alike. His public schedule empty, but he did have time, it seemed, to tweet. He blamed Democrats for causing the stock market to fall. He accused Democrats of election fraud in Florida without any evidence. He picked a fight with France and other European allies over NATO funding, military spending, and he also retweeted a message saying Comcast might be violating antitrust laws. Of course, that cable company owns NBC, a frequent target of one President Trump. Over the weekend, what did the president do? He made headlines for his visit to France to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. But he made news for all the wrong reasons there. The president actually bailed on one of the main ceremonies at a cemetery, blaming the rain. The White House justified it, saying, well, he couldn't fly there on Marine One and his motorcade would be too disruptive. I should say those concerns did not stop any of the other presidents or prime ministers from showing up, honoring, I should say, not just fallen European, but American heroes who died on foreign soil. And today, Trump, he blamed the Secret Service, who are the people, if you may remember, who would be taking a bullet for him. Quote, when the helicopter couldn't fly to the first cemetery in France because of almost zero visibility, I suggested driving. Secret Service said no, too far from the airport, and big Paris shut down. Speech next day at American Cemetery in pouring rain, exclamation point. Little reported fake news. Right. I should say at that ceremony in the pouring rain, Trump did say this. Take a listen.
In the United States, Armistice Day is now enshrined as Veterans Day. We have a number of amazing veterans with us today, including 6 veterans of World War II. You look so comfortable up there under shelter as we're getting drenched. You're very smart people.
Trump, he did skip the other ceremony, and to that, it is not a laughing matter to veterans, other world leaders, and even Winston Churchill's grandson. Nicholas Orms, who's now a member of parliament, he called Trump's actions pathetic and inadequate, and those his direct quotes. Now back here stateside. California, as you know, is dealing with the costliest and deadliest wildfire in state history. Today, how did the president as consoler-in-chief act? Well, he praised first responders and he promised disaster relief funds, but that was only after he criticized the state right in the middle of the crisis. Instead of consoling victims or offering help, these were the first tweets that he sent out. And again, this is a direct quote. There's no reason for these massive, deadly, and costly forest fires in California except that forest management is so poor. Billions of dollars are given each year with so many lives lost, all because of gross mismanagement of the forests. Remedy now or no more federal payments. Then he tweeted, get smart, exclamation point. I should again mention, zero evidence whatsoever mismanagement was what was at play there in California. And now that brings us to Puerto Rico, an island with more than 3 million American citizens. Let me stress that again, 3 million American citizens living there. Trump, as you know, he's been critical of Puerto Rico ever since Hurricane Maria decimated it. That despite the fact that hundreds of thousands lost their homes and as many as 3,000 people have been presumed dead there. Now, new reports say that Trump, he wants to stop sending funding to the island, claiming with zero evidence, once again, you see a pattern here, that it is using the cash to pay down debt. there's also talk of clawing back some of the money already sent to the island because Trump claims there is mismanagement on the island. And all this comes in the backdrop of chaos at the White House. I think Reince Priebus once called it a zoo without walls, and today's apparently backroom drama seems to be bearing that out. The First Lady's office released a statement today denouncing the Deputy National Security Advisor, saying she doesn't deserve the job any longer. Again, this is Melania Trump. That means Bolton's top advisor would be shown the door. Melania Trump and the Deputy National Security Advisor have reportedly bickered over things like seat arrangements on foreign trips, most recently to Africa, and leaks about the First Lady. I should mention that just in the last few minutes, President Trump has in fact followed the wife's advice and fired that deputy. All right, I want to bring in our panel right now. Scott Vanderhoff, Republican, Rockland County exec for 5 terms, now co-chairman of the Palisades Institute of Dominican College. Jerica Richardson, former spokesperson for Prepahara and Mayor Bill de Blasio. Richard St. Paul, Republican strategist, former vice chair for the National Black Republican Association. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. Jerica, I start with you on one thing. Is it as disturbing as those 3 or 4 events that I talked about leading up till today were? The idea that any administration, whether it be a town hall, a city, a state, a federal government, that the First Lady sending out basically a directive to fire somebody, and then the president an hour later reacting to it, as we're hearing words that General Mattis, General Kelly may be shown the door shortly. This is dysfunction cubed, and no one is reining in the president's worst impulses. As bad as he's acting, I don't think he's being served well by some of the staff. And you, as I mentioned, have served for both the U.S. Attorney and then also a mayor, including the mayor of New York City. What's going on?
I mean, I think part of what's going on is there's just no accountability anywhere. The president is constantly just acting on a whim, saying things that really don't make sense, or playing the blame game and pointing to everyone but himself. There needs to be someone there that's going to be the adult in the room. And I feel like all you're hearing is excuse after excuse when it comes to any number of the issues that the president put forward. And he needs to take responsibility for things. I think one of the sayings that we often hear, excuses are the tools of the incompetent. And I think all you're seeing from this administration is incompetency right now.
You were chief executive of Canada for 5 times. Some of them, frankly, I don't think I'm going to see again in my lifetime here, the way politics works nowadays. But the idea when there was a major storm that would have impacted your constituents or anything else, that you would have any time or inclination to blame those on the front lines in an ongoing tragedy. People died subsequent to those tweets the president sent out in California. Or to think or even discuss clawing back with zero merit or stopping funds to people of an island still decimated a year later. I don't get where that comes into the conscience. This has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. I don't even want to talk the politics of it, this segment. But he only makes things worse. You know what I mean? I mean, when people are in trouble, they want their president to console, inspire, or comfort, and also assure that help's on the way. Not that the idea that, uh-oh, what's he saying? What's he going to do to us now?
Yeah, no, it is not helpful on any level. It's not helpful, and normally, getting back to your initial part there, you know, as an executive, the first thing you need to do is understand really all the facts, because you can't blame people or anything in particular unless you know exactly what's happened. This president doesn't do that, and it serves him poorly when he jumps out. And he does this, and you wonder where his chief of staff is. You wonder where the folks are who can control some of these.
Apparently, maybe being shown the door pretty shortly if you believe the rumors coming out of the White House.
Well, and he is, you know, talking about the adult in the room, he's been the only one, I think, from at least to our vantage point, that has been there. So the answer is, he does not improve his ability or his reputation as a chief by doing this. He only diminishes all of us in many respects. It's really unfortunate.
And Richard, again, let's take the Republican part out of this, all right? Because you always assume the role here of defending sometimes the tough position at times on the show. That comes later in the program. For now, though, you've worn a uniform. You've served the country. You don't get to pick your missions. You don't. But can we even have Veterans Day that's not controversial? I mean, whatever you say, do you imagine for a minute if Obama, when other world leaders are going to honor on the 100th anniversary soldiers who died in service of this country and to liberate the world, that he's cooling his heels back in Paris because he didn't want to get wet? And on Veterans Day, when, forget that it's the right moral thing to do, it's the biggest political malpractice that you don't show up to Arlington Cemetery. And now you got American soldiers who are going to have to spend Thanksgiving at some fakakta thing at the border here, right? When that's not even what their job is entailed or allowed to do. Like, just put on the service hat for a second. This has to offend somewhat that a guy who never served with 4 or 5 deferments, and he doesn't remember the foot that the bone spurs were in that kept him out of the last one, that you can't even phony it up. I mean, come on, right?
Yeah, so certainly the optics look bad, right? And without any further explanation about why our tradition...
But there's no explanation.
Yeah, right.
Get wet.
Again,
okay, get an umbrella.
But without any further explanation, not only optics look bad, but the actions itself look bad. Now, I have to question whether there was something else going on. Was the president sick at the time and didn't want to say he was sick? Because certainly we've lost at least one president who decided to give an inauguration speech.
You're going way back in time,
I'm
Richard.
going back to the 1800s, but
yes,
we lost at least one president within 6 months because they decided
I didn't see you playing
not
the
to wear a
1800
coat during the wind,
But
during the winter
Richard,
time.
if that were the case, he's well enough to start, you know, putting the digits here on to be tweeting out in the morning the things that I have already gone through. My point is, guys are putting their you-know-whats and women on the line here in hot spots around this country. We were reminded recently about still that we're a nation at war and people again losing their lives. He, out of whatever his choices are putting people unnecessarily in harm's way. Right. And he cannot have the basic decency to show up when the other world leaders do. Well, and he blames the Secret Service for it.
Well, let me just say this. Here's a president that defines himself through strength. You know, can you imagine if he said, listen, I'm sick, I can't make it?
It should be noted, nobody has given that as that's a theory without any substantiation.
But it would not be this president to say something like that. But my thought is that there's something else happening here that he would break
You
tradition.
are giving him the benefit of the doubt, my friend, without any evidence
here's a
whatsoever.
president that increased the pay for the military. It would not make sense to me, this is just my opinion, why he wouldn't come out on Veterans Day unless there was something else happening.
But you know what? The Arlington thing is even more, I mean...
That's what I'm talking about, the 54-year tradition.
No. They put out a statement, Richard, where he said, I already did my part in Europe. That's why he didn't do, if he could, there's a lot of ways to go, Richard, but he said, people have criticized me unfairly, I did my part in Europe, when clearly he didn't. Andrew, I started this by saying, this was 72 hours. Mm-hmm. I didn't do the show last night here. I was out of pocket. In 3 days, and then with what's going on there now, I'm not even going into the madness of today and everything else, but it's just, it'd be nice if he could make things better. This is not tough politics. You honor American sacrifice in Veterans Day weekend. You're there on foreign soil where, and I've been to the cemeteries for those that are honored for both World War I. I went to Normandy. It is the most hallowed ground I have ever been. I put Arlington right there with it, but we can say whatever comments we want, but the French honor our, as they should, our unbelievable sacrifice that our soldiers have made. And you can't make the trip. For some reason, that stuck out to me as, my God, do we have any norms anymore?
Well, it seemed like the most vain portion of this all, that the sense really was he just didn't want to get his head wet, so he didn't want to go. And that's, I think, what makes it that much more difficult to swallow, because it just, we're not used to a president being that vain with his decisions and being that in your face about it.
And how about the power of the purse? That people that are literally having their state go up in flames, or people, we've covered this, Andrew, Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. Puerto Rico has not recovered. I mean, the amount of schools that have been shuttered, the amount of people that have left the island, that they can't get basic services that work there, or potable water or whatever else. For him to talk about not only cutting off the funds or clawing back money.
Well, and I say this with respect. We're 2 years into this thing. Who exactly do you think our president is? He's the guy he has been the entire time. He does not care about what's in the best interest of the people who are involved in a decision. He does not care about what's the best image or what's the best optics from a decision that he has to make. He simply does not care. He is looking to take political partisan advantage of every scenario that he can find. So if wildfire in California becomes an opportunity to take a political shot, hurricane recovery in Puerto Rico becomes an opportunity to take a political shot, election recounts in Florida and Georgia and Arizona become a chance to take a political shot. That's his bottom line, always.
And I'll give you the last word on this, Scott, but to me, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever else. When people say that we are at a more divisive time, I agree. But the idea that blame is shared equally among everyone, he's an inciter in chief. And it's all of our countries. That's not helping. Nothing he did was helpful in the last 3 days.
No, and all I wanted to do is point out that it wasn't only an attack on honoring our veterans, but there's a whole subliminal issue which deals with Europe, France, Germany, and how we relate to them and how we just pull away. And a lot of this may be personal, in his own personal guidance that he says, I don't want to join with Germany, I don't want to join with Macron, I don't want to join with them. And that bodes very ill for the rest of our relationship.
And he proudly doubled down on being a nationalist, and the spark that maybe he did not like, but certainly that has been fanned in the last 2 years in Europe with some of the ugliest elements coming out. As Scott says, there are consequences that go way beyond just our border here. And I think we're going to look back in history and regret at least what we've seen to this point. All right, coming up next, Amazon. They're coming to a couple of markets in our area, Long Island City and Northern Virginia. The web giant bringing thousands of jobs, investing billions of dollars. Also, though, receiving billions in incentives from those areas. We'll take a look at the costs, the benefits, and the timeline.